This is the How Did We Get Here podcast with your host, Nancy Jackson.
Well, here we are back again, ready to start a new year. And I know people are full of hope and hoping for a better year than last year because last year was very, very challenging. So today I want to go back to what we were talking about in our last podcast, which was modernism. But it's such an ambiguous and such an elusive topic that it's hard to define it. We're not finished. There's a lot more that needs to be explored to try to clarify exactly what modernism is and how it's affecting our world. So that's what I want to do today. I want to talk a little bit more about modernism. And today I want to introduce you to a Canadian. His name is Mark Mallett. He is a singer, a songwriter. He has worked as a TV reporter in Canada. And he has a large family. He's very religious and a very faithful. He's a person of great faith. Let's put it that way. And I have a couple clips from Mark Mallett in an interview that he did on a program called U.S. Grace Force. U.S. Grace Force is a podcast that it's pretty popular and a lot of people watch it. And it's a weekly program that I follow and I like it a lot. And I was just struck by Mark Mallett's comments and he was being interviewed about modernism. So I thought, well, this is a good one. I think that we ought to listen to him. And so what I want to do is play a couple clips from Mark Mallett on U.S. Grace Force, and then we can resume our comments after that.
Welcome, everybody. This is the U.S. Grace Force podcast. I'm Doug Barry, along with my just now after Christmas amazing friend, Father Richard Heilman. And our final official guest for 2024, Mark Mallett. He's back with us. Yeah, good to have you.
Going out with a whimper.
Hardly.
What was the warning at Fatima? It was that Russia was going to spread its errors, the errors of Russia. And we know today what the errors of Russia are. That's Marxism, practical atheism, and so forth. These were the errors that were brought in by Lenin and then, really forcefully introduced by Stalin, spread throughout all of the USSR by bloodshed, by famine. Millions died under that. And then, of course, Mao brought this in China, and China still today is a kind of a quasi-capitalist communist regime, but I would say more communist. But Our Lady said that this would spread throughout the world. And we're seeing this today. And this is the hardest part for me as a watchman who's been screaming this out now for, I guess, since almost now 20 years, is that communism is spreading, but they're not using that word. The word they're using is the Great Reset. The Fourth Industrial Revolution. This is what it is. They're using climate change and the other health crisis that we went through and the new one that's just about to come. They're using this as a means to grab wealth, redistribute wealth, and impose a surveillance system in which every man, woman, and child can be surveilled and tracked and ID'd, and that all our buying and selling will have to happen through this digital ID, which will include our updated health status and so on. This isn't me speaking about conspiracy theory. This was passed by the G20 nations. This is being promoted on the UN's website. And we're at the verge of seeing this unfold. And I dare say that as we've been talking about at the beginning of the show, as we see people waking up in America They're waking up in Canada and other places in the world where they're starting to see that these leftist ideologies are truly destructive.
Mark covers a lot in his little commentary here, but he also brings in Marxism and communism. And I thought that was important that he did that, because these things are all related, and hopefully I'll be able to connect some dots as we go along to see how they are all connected. But the other thing that he did mention was that they're really trying to get rid of organized religion, and that Marxism and communism are opposed to organized religion. So I just thought we ought to bring out those points before we go any further. And then we need to talk about Fatima. And he mentioned that, Our Lady of Fatima. And Fatima is a small village in Portugal. And it's still a very, very tiny little village. There's not much going on there, except that there was a huge miracle that took place there in 1917. And I'm putting my Catholic hat back on again, as if I ever take it off, because I really don't. But there were three children. They were about 9, 10, or 11 years old, and they were cousins, actually. They kind of related. And they were peasants. They lived in very simple lives, and they had chores in their families. They were uneducated. They were illiterate. They didn't have school. They didn't go to school. They just worked in the fields. Their job was to shepherd the sheep out in the fields. And so that's what they were doing one day in May, when they saw this bright light, and this beautiful woman, a lady, appeared to them and started talking to them. And anyway, at first she didn't identify herself, but she did say that she was from heaven, and that she had a message for the world, and she was asking the children to take this message and tell other people about it. And she was trying to warn them of dangers that were coming in the future, and that if the world did not change, there was going to be there would be terrible wars, terrible suffering. All kinds of people were going to die. And she told them all these things. And they're young children. They're not prepared for this kind of thing, but they did listen, and they believed her. And she not only appeared to them once in May, but she appeared to them every month on the 13th of the month until October. And each month she would teach them something else, but she kept repeating the same urgent message that people had to pray and fast and repent of their sins, and that if they didn't, all kinds of catastrophes were going to happen. And so the children, when they went home, they tried to tell their parents. Their parents were afraid that, because there was an oppressive government in Portugal that was totally opposed to any kind of belief in God. And it was the Freemasonry that had taken over in Portugal, and they were totally opposed to anything religious or spiritual. So they were afraid to even talk about it. If you were caught with a rosary, or if you were caught praying, you would be punished. The government had made all kinds of threats and put all kinds of restrictions on people. Churches had been closed. Priests and religious people had been jailed and executed. I mean, it was like a reign of terror at that time. And so here are these three children and this beautiful lady telling them to go out and tell the whole world about her message. And anyway, the parents wanted them to keep quiet and not cause any trouble. And then, but the word spread and people found out what was going on. And then all these people showed up on the 13th of each month to witness the apparitions, although they didn't see the beautiful lady. They just saw the children. And, but the word spread and thousands of people came. So the children had asked this lady to please do something so that people would believe them and that they weren't just making this up. And so she promised that she would perform a miracle that the whole world would be able to see. And sure enough, on the 13th of October in 1917, the greatest miracle of all time, really, since the resurrection, took place in this tiny little village in Portugal. And the word had spread, and there were 70,000 people that showed up to witness this miracle. And it rained. It was a deluge of rain that day. And a lot of people had brought umbrellas, but even with that, it was still a big mess because it was out in a field, out in the countryside, and there weren't even paved roads. So with all these people coming, it was just a big, muddy, mushy mess, and people were drenched and soaked to the bone. So this is going on, then all of a sudden, there's this change, and the sun started to move around in the sky, and then it got bigger, and it looked like it was going to crash into the earth. And people were panicked and screaming and terrified. And then the sun, and it was spinning, and it kind of just dancing in the sky. People were in awe, and there were people 50 miles away that had witnessed it. It wasn't just the people in the field. So, I mean, this was a credible event that took place, and there were news stories talking about this event. So, I mean, it was a great big deal. And anyway, so all of this is part of the story of Fatima and Our Lady of Fatima, who is the mother of Jesus, and we Catholics call her Our Lady. These are pictures that have been in the archives for over 100 years now. So anyway, the main thing is that Mary warned about the errors of Russia. She called it the errors of Russia, and that if people did not change, Russia would spread its errors. And it was a way of defining or describing communism. And that is what she was warning people about, was communism. And so here we are back again with another. And what I've kind of decided to do is to lump all of these names, whether it's Marxism, communism, Freemasonry, modernism, atheism, all of these isms, I lump them in together, and I've just decided to call them the collaborators because they're all kind of pushing in the same direction. Well, we could talk about Fatima for a long time because it was a very historic event. but we are running out of time. And so I think we're going to just take a break and call this part one of our quest to figure out what modernism is. And um, we will be back. And I have other questions. What about America? I mean, what is it doing to the United States and to America? And what's it doing worldwide? This modernism and all the other people that are involved in it. It's not just modernism, it's a lot of other isms. And I want to talk about those. And so we're going to do that in the next session. So I hope you'll come back and be sure you hit the like button because and share it with your friends if you find this compelling or interesting, or if you have any questions. Come back because we're going to keep going with this and try to find some answers and connect some more dots so that it really makes sense to everybody. So I'll see you in the next podcast, which will be part two. And in the meantime, just take it easy and God bless, and I'll see you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the How Did We Get Here podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends and family. For more information and to connect with Nancy, email howdidwegethere1884@gmail.com.